All right, guys, ninth graders, this is your vocabulary for lesson 8. Uh, we are getting into a new form of the passé composé, not too different than what we're used to, but it does have its own little twists and turns. So you will hear me refer to this group of verbs as the DrP verbs, okay? And you'll see soon why I call them the DrP verbs. So far, we've worked with the conjugation of verb in the passé composé, and the construction has been your subject, the present of avoir, and then your past participle. We learned that in order to form a past participle for ER verb, we drop the ER, replace it with E accent aigu. We learned that in order to form the past participle for an IR verb, we drop the IR, replace it with I. We learned that in order to form the past participle of an RE verb, we drop the RE and replace it with U. That rule does not change here. We do have a few rebels in here also, right? So after we learn how to conjugate regular verbs in the passé composé with the present of avoir, then we move on to our rebels, right? If you remember, those are the verbs who don't follow those past participle rules. So for example, the past participle of avoir was eu, or the past participle of faire was fait, F-A-I-T. Okay, so we do have a couple of rebels in here as well. But these verbs, the DrP verbs, get conjugated with the present of X. So the good news is the construction itself doesn't really change. Okay, you're still going to have your subject. Instead of conjugating avoir in the present with your subject, you're going to conjugate être with your subject. All right, and then you're still going to go ahead and form the past participle. For the most part, it's going to follow those regular verb rules, and I will point out the ones that are irregular here. So in your packet, you should have received a vocab sheet that you can write these on, okay? And just follow along. So here are my DrP verbs. To become, devenir. All right, so right off the bat, we start with a rebel. So devenir is a very irregular verb. It's an IR verb, but we're not going to drop the IR, replace it with I. We're actually going to drop the IR, replace it with you, devenu, okay? To come back is revenir. All right, so again, another rebel right here. And its past participle is revenu. So if you remember when we learned how to conjugate the verb venir, to come, right? We said that there was a silver lining because if you know how to conjugate venir, you know how to conjugate devenir and revenir. Well, the same is true for the formation of past participles. If you know how to form your past participle for venir, then you know how to form the past participle for devenir and revenir. So if you notice, right, it's the same ending. It's just the first couple letters changed to reflect these verbs here. All right, to pass by, passer, and that's an ER verb, regular ER verb. So we're going to go ahead and drop the ER, replace it with accent aigu for the past participle. To go up or to get on, which we learned when we learned about the metro. Monter, another regular ER verb. So drop the ER, replace it with accent aigu. To return home, rentrer. Drop the ER, replace it with accent aigu. To exit or to go out. So a verb we just recently learned in the present tense. Now we're learning it in the passé composé, in the past tense. Sortir. We're going to go ahead and drop the IR, replace it with I. Sorti. There's that verb to come. So based on what we have up here, you should know what the past participle is going to be. Venir. And if you guessed venu, that is correct. Our verb to go, aller. So even though aller is an irregular ER verb, because we conjugate it in the present with like je vais, tu vas, il, elle va, the past participle forms the regular way. So just drop the ER, replace it with E accent aigu. All right, here's our next rebel. To be born is naître, okay? You've already learned this past participle in Unit 1 when we learned I was born on April 2nd, or I was born in Plattsburgh. Né is our past participle for this one. Okay, so far we have 4 rebels and there's only one more. Okay, to go down or to get off, again, we learned this verb when we learned about the metro system. Descendre. It's an RE verb, so we're gonna drop the RE and replace it with you for the past participle. To enter, entrer, drop the ER, replace it with E accent aigu. To return, retourner, drop the ER, replace it with E accent aigu. To fall, tomber, drop the ER, replace it with E accent aigu. A connection here, usually students connect with to tumble, down, for to fall. To stay, rester, drop the ER, replace it with E accent aigu. To arrive, arriver, drop the ER, replace it with E accent aigu. To die, mourir. This is our last rebel, and the past participle is mort. I'm sorry, this is in the way here. Let's see, I can hide it. Okay, so think of mortician, Voldemort, okay? Um, those are the connections here. And to leave, another verb that we recently learned how to conjugate in the present tense, partir, drop the IR, replace it with I. So those are, those are your Dr. P verbs, okay? And if you look down here, down the line, you'll see Dr. P, Mrs. Vandertramp. And it's kind of like an acronym that we give ourselves to remember these verbs. So for the most part, when it comes to the passé composé, most of our verbs are going to get conjugated with the present of avoir, okay? Except for these Dr. P and Mrs. Vandertramp verbs and another group of verbs that we're going to learn next year. So you're going to hear me refer to these as Dr. P verbs. By knowing Dr. P and Mrs. Vandertramp, it can kind of help you figure out which verb get conjugated with the present of être. So honestly, if you memorize this list here of verbs, then you'll know that if your verb, the verb you're trying to conjugate in the past tense is not part of this list, then you must have to conjugate it with the present of avoir. So it's this is not a concept that's going away. Dr. P verbs are coming back multiple times between now and the end of college class. So do yourself a favor, learn them. It's going to take a while and it's okay. Okay. And then right now we're just focusing on these Dr. P verbs. And then later on, we're going to be thrown, regular verbs that get conjugated with avoir, irregular that get conjugated with avoir, Dr. P verbs. So it's going to it's going to make our brains hurt a little bit, but that's okay. Baby step, small chunks. All right. So, be on the lookout for more videos from me explaining how we're going to go about conjugating these verbs.